Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 49 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. We are getting up there in the episode count. I am your host, emallson, and I am, as always, joined by Anomoly.
Hello.
And this week, we are having our very slightly late post Christmas episode.
Yes.
Uh, this was an exciting week. This was a very exciting week, mostly because of the race to world first, which did wrap up this week. Nobody in the race had to raid on Christmas.
True.
Um, the world first was taken by then, so I actually don't know if anybody did raid on Christmas, but Echo was done, Limit was done. There is currently not a world third, and we will be talking about that in a bit. Um,
Yes.
but before we even get to our regular first section talking about the stuff that happened this week, you want to mention for those that listen to the audio version, you might have noticed that last week's did not sound the same. And that's because I forgot to start our recording bot before we started the episode. So I wasn't able to do much audio correction. Like my skills are not that deep. I can't do it when everything's mixed down to one stereo track already. I had to basically rip the audio from our Twitch stream, which meant it was how it was. I also realized just now Anam is too quiet on the stream, so let me turn him up.
Oh, nice.
Boom, boom, boom. All right,
I have a lot of important things to say today, Emerson. I need my voice
I
loud.
believe it. I believe it. Um, yeah. So with that out of the way, uh, I guess even one more thing. Well, one of the big things that did happen this week is Christmas. If you are in North
Christmas.
America, Europe, it's a kind of a big deal. How was your Christmas, Anam?
It was amazing. Um, it was fun. So I'm of the older. I'm older, so I have kids. It's nice when you have kids actually doing Christmas because I get really, really excited
Uh
about
huh.
the littlest thing. Um, my youngest has learned the phrase "This is my favorite." Or, it's my favorite. So like every
Oh,
present she opened, she was like, "It's my favorite." I was like, "Everything can't be your favorite," but no,
well,
it was good.
obviously every time she gets something, that's her new favorite, right?
That's true.
This is the new thing.
She had a lot of new favorites. But no, it was a good Christmas. I got a bunch of Legos. I posted a picture on Twitter
Nice.
and I built them. So I got the Razor Crest from the Mandalorian, which was a lot of fun to build. And then I got the Pirate Island or like the Pirate Cove Island that like
Yeah.
it's basically like a broken up pirate ship as an island, but then you can take the ship parts off and make a bigger ship like
Ooh.
with it. It's super cool. And literally all I want to do is build Legos. Like I'm done with WoW. I think I'm just gonna build Legos
You're
for the rest
just
of my
gonna
life.
invest in Legos and maybe start streaming Legos. That's gonna be
Exact
your new gig.
exactly. It was so much fun. I wish so. Like I haven't. They're gonna eventually be here. If you're watching the video stream, you can see, but it'll be on, like the desk thing behind me or car, whatever this thing is. It's a table or something. But it'll eventually be there. So you'll be able to see them. But yeah, they're upstairs. My kids played with them. They literally broke like the masts on one of the ships over, which is great to try and fix. But no, it was fun. So, how was yours?
Pretty chill. So we had some nice bad weather day before
Oh,
Christmas and weren't sure if we were gonna do we were doing we had planned to do a small family get together.
hmm.
It's people that were in town, and almost didn't happen. It was a small Christmas miracle that all the roads got cleared in time
Oh,
for us to
nice.
do it Christmas morning. So that was fun. My sister has a 1 year old, and so they were very excited about mostly the boxes and the wrapping paper, and less
Yeah,
so the actual toys.
that's awesome.
Um, but yeah, uh, got some Stellaris DLC. I have a co-op game going with one of my brothers. That's
Oh, awesome.
so that's gonna be fun. We're gonna have to start a new game so I can use the DLC. And yeah, I mean, the other thing that's occupied my week is I've been looking for a new apartment. So in about 2 weeks, fingers crossed,
Oh,
this entire room will look much different because it will in fact be in an entirely different building.
that's awesome. That is awesome. So you found a place?
I have
I
found a
think
place. I haven't heard back from them yet because I did the application thing the day before Christmas. So
gotcha. Yeah.
they weren't in the office Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, so I'll find out Monday or Tuesday,
Oh, very cool,
and if
very
not, I'll
cool.
have to.
Yeah,
Always fun.
I hate that's the one thing I'm glad that I don't do anymore. It's like looking for places to live. I hated it. I hated moving. So
It sucks so much.
yeah,
Yeah.
awesome, awesome. Well,
uh,
God, I'm glad Christmas was good.
so uh, in WoW though, we also had a very exciting week. Uh,
Yes.
you wanna take us through what happened?
Yeah, so we got some pre-Christmas hot fixes, which weren't that exciting. I think the biggest thing to pull out of this was they did make a couple changes to some bosses, like you can no longer spell reflect the debuff on Lady Darkvein, that drops the ads, I believe.
Yeah.
They fixed Dancing Fever on Council, so it now actually spawns or triggers correctly, which is, we'll talk about it in a bit, but on the kills last week, so if you killed it last week, it was much easier because you only got one or two Dancing Fevers the entire fight, and now you'll get them basically every time a mob either dies or reaches 50%, which was the correct timing. So a Dancing Fever is the new Mythic only debuff where you essentially goes on I think 4 or 5 players, and you have to jump to get rid of your stacks, and every jump does raid wide damage. So um, just some more raid wide damage, and they also made an update to the timer for the other side or the other side. Um, so just a couple of things. No real big class changes, you
They
know.
fixed the Necrotic Wake bolstering thing, where you could one shot
Oh
bosses
yes,
with the Flesh Crafter.
yes, I did see that actually. Yeah, that's hilarious. So yeah, so nothing too big in terms of hot fixes. A couple minor things that you can tell. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, looks like they're the big. I mean, I think the big thing is the Council of Blood one is it just makes the fight
Yeah.
harder from a healing perspective. So
That's definitely the biggest one.
yeah.
I do think it's funny that Glyph of Destruction you could line of sight.
Oh, an Artificer.
Yeah, it's not necessary to do that because the boss doesn't seem that hard once people like learn the dance. But I can totally see setting up a transcendence behind something that gives LOS and just
Yeah,
transcending out, not getting the debuff, and then just waddling back to the boss.
that's hilarious. That's funny. Yeah, and they said they fixed the Warlock summoning. I don't know if they have yet. So if people
We
don't
could
know, in
not
Mythic,
summon in Heroic on Tuesday.
okay, yeah, we had issues summoning on Wednesday in our Mythic clear because we moved our raid day up one day. Um, so yeah, so it'll be interesting to say the least.
And that's the real
There.
big downside of Christmas week.
Yeah,
Rating is kind of spooky around holidays.
yeah,
Uh,
it's all over the place for us.
our normal raid day is Friday, Sunday. Yesterday was Christmas. Yesterday was Friday.
Yeah,
So obviously, like 20 of 26 people were not able to raid yesterday. So we are
right.
doing. We moved that day to Sunday, and it's still or to Monday, and it's still like only 20 people can make it. So if anybody like can't make it, we're just gonna have a
Yeah,
1 day raid week. Yeah, it's
it happens.
annoying. It is like I know the rest of the world is having to deal with this too, so it's not like too annoying because I know other guilds are in the same situation. But
Yeah,
like the midweek team in our guild raids Tuesday, Wednesday, like didn't have any issues. So
yeah, they were perfect. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we were missing, I think, like one or two people on our Wednesday because we're normally Tuesday, Thursday. So we missed like one or two. It just sucked that one of the people was our priest, and we were doing Sun King progression. So like
ooh, so no
Guardian
guardian
Spirits,
spirit.
yeah, we had to use an alt priest for it. Which I mean, the guy, not as geared, not very, not that he's not good, just like doesn't know priest as well.
Yeah,
So it was rough. We did do some progression on it. We should kill it this week coming up, but it was definitely a rough 4 hours. So.
yeah.
Um,
So how far are you guys in the instance of this?
so we are, what's that? Four, three, four. We have
So you
the
did
first two,
first
Huntsman,
two, hunger, and then
Hunger and
hungering,
Destroyer.
and
Then I guess we're only 3 of 10. Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah. So our next one's Sun King. We'll probably do Sun King, Artificer, and then Lady Darkvein. I think that'll be the order. I don't know though. I don't make up the order. I just show up. All I know is Mistweaver's Pump on Sun King. It's the most fun I've ever had. So, are you second guessing my progression
No,
for it?
sorry. There's a spam bot in this
Uh,
in chat. I am
Gotcha.
blocking you.
Nice. Um, so yeah, so that was our progression on that was I think that's the hot fixes for this week. So um next up was I don't want to go spend I don't know how much time we spend on this, but next up was a little bit of drama coming out of the world first race, but it really affected I think more of the community at large, which was Nagi, who is
Yep.
a raider in Echo, um, and a very prolific like add-on writer, weak or writer. Just general is very big in those communities. He is the author of um, Mythic Dungeon Tools,
Yes.
um, and then he also has a bunch of weak ores that he's written, like most notably probably it's the cooldown tracker front end to Zen tracker that a lot of teams use. But he's got a bunch of other stuff like he's written, an interrupt tracker that's really good in Mythic Plus. I don't. Those are the two big ones I use of them. I don't know if there's others, but some big stuff. And what he ended up doing was he pulled down all his weak ores, so they're no longer public. And then he's also basically removed all of the mob data from Mythic Dungeon Tools. And you can get it, but you have to be a Patreon or a Twitch subscriber to get the data, basically to load it back in. Um, and this all stemmed from kind of just some, not I'm not going to say typical internet trolling, but he essentially was trolled on his stream after Limit had killed Sire Nathrius and um, yeah, seemed to kind of sort of get very upset with that and just sort of pulled everything down from there. So
Yeah.
it sucks. I mean, there's ways around it. I mean, like particularly for MDT, it's hosted on GitHub. You can go back to a back commit and get the data if you really want it. But I
There's
think the
also
bigger. Oh, sorry.
someone forked it already. There is now
Yeah.
man baby dungeon tools. Um,
Yeah.
no comment
Which is
on that, but
yeah. No. No.
it is open source, like a lot of other community tools, like Simcraft, like WoW Analyzer. So even if Nogi tries to put the data behind a paywall, we still have access to the old data. There's already a fork of it, meme name or not.
Yeah.
Um, I expect there will be other forks of it with less jerkish names that
Yes.
are the ones that actually get updated, because while Nagi is the main developer behind Mythic Dungeon Tools, he's not the only person that contributes to the data collection.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's something that, the people that are contributing in that way are not going to want to put it under a paywall that only Nagi profits from.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and the other problem is too is like it's like I looked at the license too. He licensed under GNU, which basically means like you can take it and do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's not like if people who don't understand like open source licensing, like GNU's what the Linux kernel's under, probably one of the first big, actually it might have been actually the first big open source license like agreement out there. And essentially you can do whatever you want. The GNU
Yeah.
license kind of gives you carte blanche to take the whatever the source code is, modify it however you want it, repackage however you want it. The biggest thing though is I think you have to keep the GNU license in place for anything you copy basically.
Yeah. Not to
Um,
get like too caught up in the like minutia of open source licensing. But this is a fairly common thing.
yeah,
There's a lot of software out there like this. A lot of the add-ons that people use are licensed in similar terms, which is why, when something goes unmaintained, someone else can come and pick it up and continue maintaining it without having to worry about, legal repercussions from basically taking somebody else's work.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, it definitely sucks. I mean the side of the story that I kind of feel bad on is like he just seems like he's in a tough spot right now, right? Just like
Yeah.
watching the streams, like watching some of the clips from it, right? I hope he's okay. Like ultimately, like it sucks for the community that he pulled this, but I think the bigger thing is like I just hope he's okay,
Yeah.
right?
Like,
Like
I've seen a couple of screenshots that people posted. I'm not going to repost them here. That makes it seem like he's having a real bad time right now,
yeah,
um, based on things that he said in like his patron only channels and stuff like that. Um,
yeah,
and some amount of this backlash he's getting is certainly self-inflicted.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah, there's no real defending some of the stuff he's done here.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, there were. I mean, you've seen Twitch chat before.
Yeah. I mean, the internet's a place full of assholes. Like we can be
Yes.
pretty honest with it, right? Like it's
Yes.
just people who just are rude um and like a lot of times like it's some people can take it, other people can't. So, um, I think yeah, in this situation it just sucks that his reaction is not gonna garner like a good reaction from a large amount of people, right? Like this is really gonna kind of sort of pile on to him, which it shouldn't, but I mean, generally that's what happens when you sort of take sort of drastic stuff like this or drastic action like this. So,
Yeah,
um,
and so there are forks. I don't think the community has settled on the direction to go at this
right.
point. I think a lot of people are kind of hoping that gets a grip and just undoes this, but paywalling the data is not something that is like a trivial thing to do. That took some time for him to do.
Oh yeah.
So uh I kind of feel
I
like
don't know.
it is set in stone, and we're gonna all be switching to some other random word that starts with M dungeon tools in
Yeah. What?
a couple months or a couple weeks.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is like I mean, maybe not a good thing out of this, but one thing out of this is that I found like a web sort of app version of MDT called Keystone Guru,
Yeah,
which I don't think. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen it before, but
I've been
it's
hearing about
basically
it.
like yeah, it's basically like MDT but in a web browser. So if you run two monitors, it's actually really helpful. That's one of the biggest
That
issues I
actually
had
sounds
with them.
super useful.
Yeah, the biggest issue, one of the biggest issues I had with MDT is that because it's in game to like view the route mid game or like mid run, like you'd have to open up the window, it covers part of your screen. There's not really a good way to get an overlay view of what route you said you were doing at the start unless you like sort of memorize it in your head. So, I mean, it seems like I think you're pulling it up here on the screen
Yeah,
for those watching on video. But the nice part is that it sort of gives you that if you have a second monitor, you can sort of view it. I'm assuming too, there's probably ways to like use like an overlay, like if you try to overlay like a web page or something. I'm sure there's programs out there that'll do it, so you can kind of see it as you do it. But yeah, I mean it's got a lot of the same features as MDT does. It's just in a web browser. So it's pretty cool. I'm gonna check it out definitely, sort of starting this week, and a
yeah,
lot of the keys that I run. See how well it works. But as a tank specifically, it's probably really useful. And really, if you have two monitors, I don't know why you wouldn't use it because it gets you
you're
something on the second monitor.
absolutely right. Because I was very much like doing keys this week, pulling up MDT in between pulls where I wasn't sure exactly where I was going next and needed to double check it. It's like, especially like the Arden Wheeled Wing in the other side, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
which of these identical bird packs am I pulling? How many of them do I need? There's like 7 of them that have 3 birds, they're all the same.
Exactly.
And I just needed to know, okay, how many am I pulling? Where are the ones that are actually different and have a baby bird that's going to pull the entire world?
Yeah. No,
Dangerous
it's
place.
yeah. I mean, and I've used MDT like when I tanked last season at the end of BFA to like check percentages through the dungeon too. So like as I get to certain checkpoints, either like before or after bosses, being able to say like when I kill this boss, I should be at this percentage,
Yeah.
and that way like I know that I've not missed anything as I've gone through it. So yeah, I mean Keystone.guru is the site. Check it out. I don't know. To be fair, don't know how accurate it is. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Um, but at least in terms of like a viable replacement, it seems like it's been around even as far back as last season. So,
Yeah,
um,
and this is something like we'll put the link in the show notes. I'm
mhm,
very curious to see how this pans out. When there's something explosive that happens like this is the time that other smaller tools, lesser known tools like this are gonna
oh yeah,
really get talked about and explored, and the community will come out of this better for it, regardless of what Nagi does.
yeah,
The only real loser in this situation, the only one who's losing anything in this situation.
yeah, yeah. It is what it is. But yeah, hopefully some good comes out of this one. Um, So that was the drama for the week, I'll say. And then the other thing that happened this week was actually yesterday on Christmas Day. Limit GM and raid leader Max essentially did a review of their Nihilotha progression. Essentially broke down boss by boss. Um, really like why they ran the comps they did. What was their strategy? What was their testing strategy versus what they did on live? Really informative. Um, and I think it's if you are if you are in a guild that is maybe not like US or world top 100, but is in that sort of upper echelon after that, right? It's definitely worth a view. I think if you go any lower, like the guides and videos out there are going to be helpful and just like here's how you do the mechanics, but and it's probably be helpful even if you're at that lower level. But really, what the interesting thing to me about this is the way they've approached way he approaches the fights and why they run certain things they run,
Yeah,
why they pick certain classes, what their thought process is in terms of like dealing or handling certain mechanics, um, and even why they did and did not do anything. And he did do a couple of things where he's like, if I was killing this today in a guild, here's how I would do it differently than the way we did it, right?
yeah. Like
Um,
Huntsman, using Huntsman as an example, he went through not just the limit strat,
mhm,
the changes that they made because there was the nerf to or the buff to the fight between testing and live, but
mhm,
also he went through the strategy that he would use if you don't have the immunes that are necessary to immune the Sin Seekers,
right.
um, which is a very different strategy. Um, and similar other fights, he went through changes to the strategy he would do if you were trying to do the boss now. So I would
Mhm.
definitely like he's got them highlighted on his Twitch channel, I believe. Um, and I would like 100% if you are rating Mythic this tier, go and watch those videos.
Yeah.
And it's great not only from the like learn the boss fights for this tier kind of perspective, but also from the like how to approach raid prep, how to strategy
Right.
kind of perspective. I watched a lot of it while he was live, and I'm going to go back and review some specific bosses that were working
Yeah.
um,
That's
in
exactly what I did.
the near future. Like we're going to be pulling Hungering Destroyer and hopefully killing it tomorrow night. And they used a very different strat than most people. Like most people on Hungering Destroyer right now use the four corners strat,
Yeah.
where you've got the four markers down. It's the Vectis style thing where like it groups on each marker, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And they did something entirely different, which I didn't realize because I missed that part of their stream. When
Yeah.
they killed Hungry Destroyer, where they just had like the ranged in the back just kind of spread out, and the melee all stacked on one side of the boss, and just kind of had Max calling, you know, who
Well,
to
well, the
who to soak
the
where.
interesting thing they did. So what they did was that, and this is actually a really good idea, is that um, so other than the first group, every group after that that got miasma, people who initially soaked were those who just had miasma, because your
Right?
debuff will have reset. So basically, they could only always guarantee at least one person soaking with clean stacks on the
Yeah,
next set of miasmas, which was a very good idea,
yeah,
right? Because even with one person, you take while you're not healing and you're not stable, you're still losing health. You basically like limit the rot damage initially, which was sort of Max's point. And then like Max, yeah, sat there and basically had another weak aura that was like, here's the people who have zero stacks, and they would help soak anybody that got low. I mean, I would recommend. I mean, Limit did this. They posted all the weak auras they used.
yep,
I would grab the Hunger and Destroy weak aura if you're progressing in that fight,
absolutely.
because it's part even if it's just for the health, like seeing people who have miasma, how much health they have, and like how much time is left before the miasma drops, like in a very concise box, is huge. Because then you can tell, as like in Raider, you can make the individual assessment like, do I need to go soak this person or not? And like if there's 2 seconds left, they're at half health. You don't need to soak them. You
Yeah,
save yourself a stack or two, right? For the next ones to come out, and potentially even a reset, right? If you're low. So it's sort of timing your debuff. So yeah. But the breakdown is super. I mean, it's long. I would go through it. I think you're doing the right thing of like looking at it as you get to certain bosses.
yeah,
Um, I was building Lego, so I had Max on in the background as I was putting together a pirate ship.
yep. I
Um,
was slamming toward.
nice. So yeah, it's definitely really informative, and funnily enough, I wish that they would do this during the race. I know it's probably more difficult to do it then, but as
Yeah,
they kill bosses, like getting someone who was a part of their strategy, like building and being like, here's what they did, here's what they've changed, right? Um, you know
that
what
would
I
be
mean?
super
Or
cool.
sort of, yeah, or sort of call it specific strategies. If they could get that person, coverage would be so much better.
Yeah,
Um,
I didn't
and I
even
know like
watch the
for
limit, like the complexity for stream.
yeah, like
I just
the
pulled up
mainstreams,
Max's.
yeah, like the mainstreams are not like if you like the personalities that are there, like they have some interesting like talking over points, right? But like ultimately, like just listen now that people stream comms, like it's just better to watch like Max or any like I
Yeah,
watch maybe a lot too in
eh,
terms of like just because.
even if you're interested in rating, even just at the level we do, I do.
Hmm.
Oh, you compare
Well,
anymore or
you
not
can
because you
we do.
switched like 5 times. um, but you know, last year my guild was around, or my team was around
Hmm.
in killing this off, and it's super, super, super informative listening to Max raid lead, listening to their comms.
Hmm.
Um, you know, they have, there are things. Someone in my guild commented they were very memey, like my guild is in comms, which is fun.
Yep.
That makes rating. That's part of what makes rating fun. Um, but they are also very disciplined about shutting up when
Right. Yeah.
frog is happening. Like when Max is saying something, the raid is silent.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there. I mean, it's very much that sort of turn it on, turn it off type atmosphere where they realize like, hey, when we can joke around and when we need to sort of focus in. Um, so yeah, it was. I mean, it was a good breakdown. So I mean, even to be fair, I said at the beginning, maybe if you're at a lower tier, it doesn't make sense. I think honestly, it's probably good for anybody to watch.
Yeah,
Kind of thinking
like
through it
the
now.
the only reason I wouldn't watch it is if you're not rating Mythic.
Yeah, that's true.
Um, because there are things like he went over Dark Vein. Dark Vein's a completely different fight on heroic.
Yeah.
So same with Hungry Destroyer. Hungry Destroyer you can basically YOLO on heroic because stacks don't last long enough. Do you even
Right.
get
Yeah.
stacks? I don't remember. I think you
You
do.
don't.
You don't? Okay.
You don't. No.
So then all the stack management stuff is wrong,
Hmm.
or not necessary, rather.
Right. Yeah.
So really, all you need to do is
Yeah. On
so.
that
But
fight.
yeah, if you're Mythic rating, 100% go check it out. It will be in the show notes. It is well worth, even for bosses that you might have already killed and are now going to go and re-clear. There are elements of strat that you can take from that to make your re-clears better.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, it was super cool. I love this type of stuff. So the breakdown is awesome. Um yeah, and if they could pull this into like actual coverage during the race, I think it would make that much better. Although I don't know how you get somebody into a walkthrough for a guild and then not have
Yeah,
them leak it. You know, like that's the tough part. But yeah, no, it was good. Yeah, Max is good at that stuff. So
that was a great Christmas present from Max to the rating community.
exactly, yeah, exactly. He did his thing. Um, So cool, and that's basically it for this week. Like a pretty slow week. It's Christmas week, so not a ton of not a ton of stuff going on. Other than the race for world first. So,
Yep.
um, so yeah, let's get into it. I had a
Speaking
couple
of,
of points I wanted to talk about. Yeah.
okay, well, before we
Um.
get to those points,
Yeah.
I want to talk about who won.
Oh yeah, we do. So of course the boys from North America pulled out another win
I thought
back to back.
you were voting Echo last week.
Uh
No comment.
No comment. I don't. So I will. I don't. Did we pick teams or did we say days? Because I don't
We
remember
did
this.
both.
Okay, then shit. I might have picked Echo just to be
You, you,
different.
you. I think you said Echo just to be contrarian, but it's okay.
Yes. Yes. But I think days wise. So yeah. So I think I picked Echo. You had limit, of course. So you win the team prediction.
Yeah,
However,
but I said I didn't think they were gonna kill it until Friday.
exactly. I took
You
the day
said
earlier in Thursday.
Thursday, I think.
I did. I did.
They killed
And
it
then they killed it.
Wednesday. The
Yes.
limit killed the Nathrias Wednesday evening,
Yes.
which is wild, honestly. The wipe
Yeah.
count was very low compared to what I expected.
It was about 100, I think it was like 148,
Yeah,
150,
something
something like
like
that.
that. Which I mean, I my guild can kill it
143.
in the 148 pulls when we get there. I kind of doubt that's going to happen because we are not limit raiders, but you know, it sounds
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, definitely lower. I mean, like definitely pales in comparison of like what the Jaina wipes at over, 300.
Yeah.
Even the Zoth was high, right?
Which this is one thing that was interesting that Max covered on his stream was why their wipe count on Denathrius was so much lower, and it is partially because they didn't get to Denathrius until their Monday.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was Monday morning they started on Denathrius, so they only had that 1 day of pulse before reset, and then after reset they had all of that gear. So
Right.
like Max was like, no, he did not think that they could have killed it without the reset of gear, from what it
Hmm.
sounded like. But that reset of gear happening so early in their progression on it meant that a lot of the DPS checks in the earlier phases just didn't matter.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then the checks like when there's a boss that has a check early in the fight, it inflates your wipe count. Like Jaina had a
Hmm.
like the boat was awful, and you wiped a lot to the boat,
Yes.
and so you were
Yes.
wiping a lot in the first 90 seconds of the fight. The Nathrius, as long as you're making it through the DPS checks in phase one and phase two, like you're gonna wipe a lot at the end of phase two / the beginning of phase three.
Yeah.
Um, and that means that you are spending a lot of time in a like 6 to 7 minute like pull wipe reset pull wipe kind of loop,
Right. Yeah.
which means you have fewer pulls.
Yeah. No, for sure. So I mean, it definitely. Yeah. I mean, it was that all makes perfect sense. Yeah, it was about 100. I think it's 143 according to Warcraft logs. I just pulled it up. Um, Yeah, and it was low. They made consistent progression. I mean, like I watched most of Tuesday, and then almost all day Wednesday. Last week I had off, so I was able to sort of to jump in and out as I was baking cookies. So it was interesting to see that progression. That fight, I don't know, like the secret phase, while interesting, wasn't
It was less than I expected.
yeah, yeah, it was. I mean, it's essentially just your raid splits and you go into two different phases, and if you touch or run over a person in the other phase, you both instantly die. So like you basically have to
I didn't know that
build
last
two
part.
camps. Oh yes, yeah. So that's
I
the
did
wipe
not
mechanic
know
there.
that. Holy
Yeah,
crap.
so if like one person runs into another person and they run over each other in two different phases, they both die. I
There
there might
is
be an
no way in
there
hell
might
my guild is killing this in 140 pulls with that
yeah.
mechanic in place.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's an AoE damage component of it. I just know that they wiped a lot one of the final knockback soaks
Because
because
they would
the
get knocked back
melee
into one another.
got knocked back into the range camp and sort of killed a bunch of people because they weren't positioned. There was like a big positioning that had to do there.
Wow.
Um,
Phase three is going to be in phase
yeah,
three. That as far as like prep goes, that's going to make phase three insane.
yeah,
Um, that, eh, going to it made phase three, which
yeah,
really shows like that they killed it in 140 wipes. Um, with that level of like punishment from that mechanic is very impressive.
yeah. And the interesting thing too is that the soaks, they go in both phases, but if you get the soak circle in one phase, the thing you actually have to soak is in the other phase.
Right. It's like on
So like
Skitra,
yeah. So you
where
have to
you
basically. Oh, sorry.
yeah, Skitra had this mechanic where you got targeted with an ad. The
Mhm.
ad would spawn at your location, but the ad spawned would spawn in the opposite phase.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
that same
exactly.
mechanic. Except instead of
Yeah,
ad, it's a ball that you gotta soak. Which also
yeah,
means that
and
because it spawned at your location, when you drop it, you gotta get the
yeah,
hell out
move.
so that the other phase can go in without
Yeah,
killing
so
you.
it's a very tight movement. Like we've already talked about this before. Like phase three movement wise is very tight, and this mythic phase, while not a huge difference than heroic, does sort of enhance that like being in the right like position at the right time.
Yeah.
Everyone though, like not just the tank keeping the boss in the right position or like DPS and healers being in the right position. It's like your entire raid has to be moving as sort of one cohesive unit to make sure like knockbacks are knocked back in the right position, soaks are dropped in the right position. Um, because you have like soaks and a knockback. So if you don't drop your soak in the right position, the
Yeah.
people are going to soak it are going to then get knocked. Yeah, it's like it's super crazy like watching them and sort of hearing Max talk about it. So, and the only other big thing here is that blood. Is it Prince or Price? I always think Prince.
Price.
I think it's Price. I think I wrote Prince in the show notes. uh, and then Blood Prince Price. Sorry, Blood Price is back. So again, it's just there's like a
That's
ton of
spooky.
damage. Yeah. So but yeah, I mean it was a crazy phase. It was
Josh
like
Bruce. Sorry. That.
nice. It was a crazy phase. It was crazy watching Limit go through it. So um I mean Echo. I didn't watch much Echo, but watched
No.
a lot of like Max's stuff. So it
Like,
was interesting to watch them go through it.
I watched a little bit of it while Max was, or while Limit was doing their Mythic Zero splits for the week.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, last week. I watched a little bit of while Limit was doing whatever prep they were doing, like their pre-raid prep from this week. I
Yeah,
watched Echoes.
gotcha. Yeah, yeah. It was cool though. But yeah, I mean Limit knocked out of the park with another one. They seem to be ahead most of the tier.
Yeah,
Um, never really never really being close. Like they'd kill a boss, and then it was never one of those situations where like they kill a boss, start on the next one, go to sleep, and then like Echo kills the boss and then catches up on the next one, right? Like Echo always seemed to be behind.
yeah.
Um,
And there was some controversy I know about the impact of the like delayed release schedule for
yeah,
EU. It didn't end up really mattering this time because I think I heard Echo killed it 16 and a half hours later. So
yes,
they still would have lost by half an hour, even if they had started at the same time and kept the same pace that they had, which obviously they wouldn't have had exactly the same pace with some of the hot fixes that went out before they reached some of the bosses.
hmm,
But that is,
yeah. It is what it. I mean, I have a little bit of section. I don't know if you want to talk about the head start or like the that now. But yeah, I mean, there. I think immediately that was the sort of some of the commentary, which was like, well, of course, NA is going to get it first. They get a head start and they get these 16 hours. But I mean, it ultimately is never 16 hours because
yeah,
NA maintenance is always longer than EU maintenance on raid release day. So it's generally not as long. And then there's always the bugged versions of encounters that whoever gets this isn't just a NA specific thing. Like if Echo
yeah,
gets to a boss first or another go gets to a boss first, they'll hit some sort of bug that potentially makes it unkillable, right? Like Sludge Fist and the immunities issue, right? Like on
yeah,
Chain Slam was like Limit couldn't do any progression, right? Um on that really until they made that fix or they were told it was going to be fixed and waited till that to come in. So they had a couple hours of sort of downtime there. Stone Legion Generals is I'm literally I just started Max's talk on Stone Legion Generals and it opens with this is the worst raid fight we've ever progressed on as a guild.
yeah.
So I'm assuming there's like a ton of stuff. There was a ton of stuff there. I mean, even just watching some of the clips,
I
you
totally
know,
missed
watching.
their general's progression. Like, I heard they killed Sludge Fist, and I was like, great, that's cool. I tuned in for the kill. That was awesome.
Yeah,
And I had other things to do, so I went and did other things. And by the time I was like, okay, I'm gonna go look at Max's stream, they were on Denathrius. Like, they
yeah.
killed that boss in like a day and a half, if that.
Yeah, it was quick, but it was buggy, and there was some. I mean, the interest like the Wicked Blades not hitting players through the winds. We talked about that a little
Yeah.
bit, and some other like they had a lot of despawning ads or ads falling through the floor as they come in.
Mm,
Ads not dropping the orbs in the intermission phases when they should.
yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think in general, like the head start, I think the head start only matters if something is killed, within the first like 4 or 5 days, right? Like if an end boss doesn't survive the weekend, then the head start essentially like becomes sort of a moot point, right?
Yeah.
Um,
It's if like Emerald Nightmares are probably the only raid I would
right,
say
yeah,
it really matters. Um,
yeah.
because Emerald Nightmare died in days, 3 days, 1 day.
I feel like it was a day because like Exorcist stayed up late and just to try Xavius and ended up killing it.
Yeah.
Like I'm almost positive, like in somehow in my mind, it's like one of those things where like people they didn't push too hard the first day because they thought Xavius would be unkillable, and Exorcist like gets there, pulls it like twice, and
And
then
it
like
died.
it
Yeah.
dies. like like in my mind, that's how that went down. So but yeah, I mean it was yeah, it was not like that. So I mean. I think there's merit on both sides of the argument. Is like, look, maybe the head start matters, maybe it doesn't. In my mind, though, like it goes long enough that like Limit and Echo, or really we can say like North America and EU get the same amount of time on a boss. So if it makes it to the first reset, it's whoever kills it first, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't think it. I don't know. I don't think the
Yeah,
head
like
start
there's
matters for
there's a whole bunch of things. Like there's the issue with bugs, like we talked about. There's also the
yeah.
issue with resets. Like obviously, Limit had their reset on Tuesday, which means
Hmm.
that they got extra gear on Tuesday. Echo didn't. Echo got extra gear on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And if that gear ends up mattering, like it did on Denatrius, then that's that changes things. It's
Right. But
but
but then you look at, I mean, then you look at like Limit and their reclear on Tuesday, which
yeah,
was like
that's one of
2
them.
hours quicker than Echoes. Like
Yeah,
that reclear. To be fair, like if you really want to break it down and be like a super nerd about the world first race, like that reclear won Limit the race, like hands down, like because they were so smooth. Like they had less than 5 wipes on generals, I believe,
yeah,
when they went back, which is like out of control for a second kill. So yeah, I mean it was I don't know. Head Start is I think it'll always be an issue because I don't actually think we'll ever get a global release.
yeah.
But I mean,
There's too many.
we
There's too many issues with it technically.
yeah, it was just it was funny that that was the first thing that was said. So
The
the other
only
thing
thing I
that
could see happening is they could do a staggered release of like the first half of the raid or something like that, and then open up the latter half at the same time. You know, but there's still the issues with scheduling. That sidesteps a bunch of the issues with maintenance and
Mhm.
developers being on hand and that kind of thing. But there's still like if you open it up at like noon NA time, that's what
Like
bam
7
oh
Like
PM. Okay.
sorry, noon, yeah, like noon, yeah. So it'd be like the afternoon, like the dinner time for Europe, basically.
Yeah.
So um if we're talking East Coast hours when you say
Yeah.
noon. Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean that, and that doesn't, I mean it, then you get guilds who get to the end first and they have a bunch of time to do other stuff to gain gear, like,
yeah.
if any still gets the first half first, they'll, have more time when the actual end bosses get released to do
That's
like the
true.
plus
So
spam and things
even
like that.
even that doesn't really solve anything. Like
No.
I don't think there's a clean way they could do it. They would actually be sane for the people working on the game, um,
Right.
and would
Or for
actually,
the game itself.
yeah,
Like I think if we think not about like just the raiders or like the teams, but like doing a global release requires you to essentially sync resets for a few weeks before that,
yeah,
right? Because the biggest thing is like if they release the raid at the same time, that's great. But then if they do that just for the week the raid is supposed to release, Europe gets 24 less hours, or 12 or whatever, or 16, sorry, 16 less hours of like heroic week type farming,
yeah.
right? So like that's an issue. That'll be an issue there, right? And
They would need to
so
like just globally move to the same reset. That's what they would need to do,
exactly, yeah.
and
Yeah, and
that's
there could
not
be a way
practical.
where you do it like a few weeks before the raid release and then like after like the final boss are killed by like maybe a couple guilds, you go back to staggered, but then like you confuse the player base. Like when is everything actually released, right? Like one
Yeah,
week it's on Tuesday evening, the next week it's on like
yeah.
Wednesday morning.
I don't
So
think they will ever do a global release just
yeah,
due to practical things with the game and taking down, the game for the entire world, working on it at all the same time, and then putting it back up. There's consistently issues the first day of a major patch in NA that then are not seen on EU. You know,
right.
if you've been into Brewmaster channels, we get thanked a lot for being the NA beta testers. Um,
Yeah.
and there is truth to that.
Oh,
Uh,
I mean, oh yeah, that's what I mean. The biggest truth to that is like the maintenance window, right?
yeah,
Like in NA, it's consistently longer than EU for major releases. Like downtime is like 9-10 hours, like where EU will maybe be down for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, right? So I think, I mean, NA does a lot of that testing, and then we do a lot of like the, like even this tier, like the heroic damage, like the damage on heroic was modified before EU went in there, and like
yep,
NA had to suffer through a raid night of like 10k a tick Sin Seekers on Huntsman, right?
yep.
Like, um, so yeah, I mean, global releases are sort of a pipe dream, and I don't think you do a fair world first race by doing it like like a competitive realm, like the tournament realm for world first, because you I think there's a lot that goes into the raid beyond just the strategy that I think more guilds, I mean, maybe you get more guilds participating at that point, right? If you don't have to gear up a bunch of characters and spend a bunch of
Yeah.
time, but it sort of lessens I think the accomplishment, right? Because to me, the race is more than just the week you run Mythic. I think it's like the prep work going into it, like
And we
the two
have
to three
seen
weeks you
that
spend.
prep, make differences. A lot of the guilds that are progressing in the top 10 are running Brewmaster monks
Hmm.
because they didn't have Windwalker prepped and
Right.
because they didn't have another, like, I guess I had another good tank paired because that's how tanks work at that level. But,
Hmm.
you know, they didn't have a Windwalker ready to go, and they didn't want their main tank playing Windwalker instead of tanking. Whereas, Limit compared to Windwalker, Trill played Windwalker for all of their progression, and they had a Prot Warrior and Vengeance Demon Hunter, and they were, aside from I think Echo, the only ones that ran that comp.
Yeah. Yeah. Which
And
is, I mean,
that level of like, if this were a tournament realm, as soon as Fat Shark, yes, or whoever saw that, they could go, oh shit, we should do that,
right.
and just go,
Right.
bam, you got a Windwalker, eye level geared up, and ready to step in the instance. And that kind of like higher level, like grand strategy kind of thing is a cool part of the race. And
Right.
while I do think that things like the ability to spam islands for 24 hours a day in the 2 weeks prior to raid release are a major detriment to the world first. The way things have worked through this expansion, I think, is a lot more sane,
Yeah.
with a lot of things being, weekly capped, and then certain things like Mythic Plus, the eye level being lower the first week means that there's not a ton of value in just doing them 27.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think that sort of prep, and I think Matt, like, just going back to sort of Max's breakdown, right? Like, their points about why they built their comp the way they built it for Denathrius was like interesting to see the differences between them and say even Echo, right?
Yeah,
Talking
which
about healer comps, they didn't run holy, like Limit ran holy paladins, right?
yeah,
Echo didn't have any ready, according to Max. I mean, maybe they did, but it didn't seem like they did. And like Windwalker again was the sort of the dark horse, right? Coming out of the race was with Trill playing that, and like teams sort of now swapping off of Windwalker's getting them ready. Just because like with Brewmaster not being the top tier god tier tank that it has been in the past, right? You still need that debuff.
yeah,
Um,
and also just Windwalker is one of the best melee DPS right now.
yeah,
And
yeah,
this is one thing that I think a lot of people might have missed because of the fact that parts of Windwalker's damage were not implemented in C, might still not be implemented. Specifically, empowered Tiger Lightning from Zuen, the level 58
oh, I saw.
ability.
It might be soon. I saw a screenshot from Hina,
Yeah, I
and
saw it. Yes, he has
got
been
a little
working on it.
excited. Yeah, sorry.
It required some work beyond just the Gale Force implementation that was in for Touch of Death, and so
Hmm.
that's actually a sizable chunk of damage. So if you're just going off of sim numbers and not actually like playing on beta, you would miss that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people did because Windwalker's been trash for a long time.
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. So I mean, I think that's to me, that part of the race still matters.
Yeah,
That where like a tournament realm would get rid of it, right? Because if you
yeah.
could just re-roll a new class at a certain eye level,
I
you
think
know.
Blizzard is also not going to do a tournament realm because it would exacerbate class stacking even more than it already has. Like
Yeah.
right
Right.
now, if you really bet on, like, if they had bet all in on Unholy DK, and I mean they ran four of them, but
Right.
if they had really gone whole hog, it was just like, okay, our only melee DPS are going to be Unholy DKs or something equally insane. A single
Yeah.
nerf, just completely ruins them. On the other
Right.
hand,
Yeah.
if it's a tournament realm, like they can just play eight unholy DKs or 5 or 7 or whatever they
Yeah.
need,
Whatever. Yeah. Whatever the magic number is. Yeah.
and Blizzard does not want to see class stacking. So if they put it on a tournament realm, it would probably be with class restrictions, and I would think at that point the guilds just wouldn't do it. They would
Yeah.
just play on the real realm where they could class stack when they wanted to.
Yeah. And do whatever they wanted to get through it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's yeah, that's why I think. I mean, global release sort of a pipe dream. I think other like I talked a little bit. I put this in the notes right a little bit, but like with other games, like I know that in Destiny 2, they do a global raid release, but they also do it in a what they call competition mode where they limit essentially your power level.
Yeah,
So like they limit your power level for it's like 24, 48 hours and like essentially from a world first perspective, like if you kill it within that, you get like an in-game item, like it's an emblem or something or a title
yeah,
or whatever. Um,
yeah.
so
Oh,
that'd be one way to do it, but because there's still the light, like in Destiny 2, there is still a reason to grind up to the cap. So you don't start at the caps. There's still work to be done going into the raid release, right?
yeah.
And then the raid release is, global at that point. Which would be a, which would
Which we
honestly
have
be an
elements of that. Like the first week before the raid, without Titan Forge,
right,
Mythic Plus gear is capped, raid gear is capped.
right.
So we kind of have that,
We
but
do actually, yeah.
there is an element of that that is kind of funny to me. Where it's like 24 or 48 hours. Like the world first race in WoW is so much different than anything.
Yeah,
I was
it's
I
so
was
much
explaining it
longer.
to a friend recently. He was commenting. He had tuned into my stream a couple times, and he's like, "All you guys do is wipe. Like all you guys do is die to this boss." He was looking at our Nazoth progression. Like I tuned in and I watched for like 30 minutes, and all you guys did was die, and you didn't kill anything. I've never seen you kill a boss. And I was like, "Yeah." World first race is going on right now. This was on like 2 something, and uh, I was like, "Yeah," and we don't expect them to actually kill the final boss this week. And like that was just a
Like
mind
mind blow,
blown
yeah.
moment for them with like hope.
Yeah, that's I don't know of other PvE like games like Final Fantasy would be like the only other big MMO that has a PvE component like this, and like just
Yeah,
like Destiny
and
2.
their like savage raids are normally cleared pretty quickly, like on the same time scale as Destiny raids. Ultimate raids,
Hmm.
I don't know. These are so infrequent. I don't know if there's like 3 of them now over 3 expansions, so I don't know if we can really draw a pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if something like pulling an idea from a different game would work. I guess the power I didn't realize the power level cap comparison makes sense. So I had not put two and two together there. But yeah, I mean, yeah, just trying to close this one off. I don't think global release is coming. I think this we it is what it is what we have. And I think the imperfectness of it makes it sort of interesting. That too, and like I think the time difference doesn't at the end of the day make a huge deal. Like I think if you look at guilds, um, like really kind of listen to like what sort of like the limits and echoes of the world say. Like there's very few of them that sort of point to that. Well, NA gets there first, right? I think that in the moment people get frustrated and they yell and they'll
Yeah,
be like this sucks, but I think if you take a step back and you ask like anybody from Echo, even that might have might have had a different opinion as Limit killed it today, I think they'd be like, look, they just beat us, like it's not
yeah.
like the 16 hours didn't make a difference at the end of the
And
day.
there are cases where it's more obvious that start advantage, head start advantage didn't matter. Lear was
Yeah,
a big one where Feather Devourer was literally unkillable until they hotfixed it.
right, exactly.
Most raid tiers don't have something on that level, but frequently there are things that get tuned down. Sometimes things get tuned up, but they are very careful not to do those until the first reset. Like
Hmm.
Council of Blood.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so I guess the only other thing I want to talk about on the race was just the turning off streams or off stream kills that happened, which was interesting. So there's kind of two instances of this that really matter. So there was limits council kill, and then there's echo when they started their Denathrius progression, which is those two. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you watch Max's stream, but Max's stream is funny when he goes over their council kill.
Because he has to go and try and dig up a VOD for it because nobody was streaming.
Right, yeah. Nobody was streaming, nobody was recording. They had shut off production in the complexity center. So like literally there was like one person that had it and it's what their videos of it's of the warlock there.
One
Um
person did their shot like this is they weren't even like running OBS recording or anything like that. It was
okay.
shadow play,
Yeah, so it's
which
awful
is that
quality.
NVIDIA thing that lets you like pull out a certain amount of recent video and turn it into an actual video. And
Yeah.
so like there was one person that caught it in time and did their shadow play and saved it. Otherwise there would be no video footage of this kill on
Yeah.
Limit's side.
Yeah, which is funny because they were basically testing their strategy for the dark recital, which is the you link with someone and drop puddles behind you.
Yeah.
So you sort of have to like spread certain ways, and I don't think they're. I Max was like, well, if you got linked, you went right. If you didn't get linked, you went left, which is like what my guild did, and I don't know how big of a strat that was, right? Maybe we copied them. I don't know, but it seems like a pretty easy, like straightforward thing to do with this mechanic.
Yeah, the
Um,
thing to recognize about that, so we had paranoias on the Zoth where people had to like spread and stack, but
yeah,
there's no spread requirement on this. You just have to stack with them and keep moving.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
It makes it pretty simple. So they basically were just testing, hey, making sure that worked, and they come back in the next day and kill it. And what they found was that I talked about this earlier, which was in the hotfix notes, was that the jumping debuff. I even forget the name of it
dancing fever.
right now. Yeah, dancing fever wasn't triggering as often. So they essentially told the devs who were watching at the time, like, hey, this isn't triggering. The devs said we're working on it, but you can go and kill it if you want. Because like we screwed up, it's not on you. And yeah, they basically got I think 3 on their kill when you should be getting like I think upwards of like 6 or 8. So so
Yeah,
yeah, they that was why they killed it overnight. They weren't expecting to. It's just the boss was bugged.
and
So that was
like
limits
it
kind of result.
should be stressed when you say bugged. Like most of the
Yeah,
fight worked. It was one basically raid damage mechanic wasn't going
which
on,
is
so the raid
which
damage
is a
was
lot of
lower.
range damage.
It is a lot of raid damage. You are totally
Yeah,
right, but they also came back in and like one shot it after the hotfix on. So
yeah,
uh,
yeah. So
I don't think
wasn't
it.
it's not that
I think they could have. I don't think they would have accidentally killed it Friday night
right.
or Tuesday night or whatever it is when they accidentally did it with that raid damage in place. But I don't think that bug made much of a difference in terms of their progression.
No, no,
And
no.
the hotfix did not go in until after reset, meaning that Echo progressed the same version of the boss. So
Right, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so then and then Echo turned off their streams after killing Stone Legion generals. I guess it was it Monday evening
I don't
or
know. I
it was
actually wasn't aware of that until just now.
yeah, so they turned off their streams after they killed Stone Legion generals. But I believe it was either Monday evening or like Tuesday morning for their initial Denathrius progression. And it's interesting that they did this. And I think the biggest reason, and so like a bunch of people were sort of upset with it, like from a sponsorship perspective, like people are like, "Oh, your sponsor going to get angry with you, whatever. It doesn't matter." Um, but yeah, they turned off their stream, and I think the reasoning is not. I think well, I guess I think I don't know. I didn't talk to these guys, but my understanding is that they basically did it to not give Limit any information, right? So Limit was
Yeah.
going into reset, going into another round of gear, and so any sort of progression or any sort of video that Limit had on how how Echo was doing the fight would just give them a heads up, right? Because they'd have a reset of gear, they could steal or sort of borrow tactics, anything like that. So a bunch of people were upset about it, but from like a tactical perspective, I mean, it made sense. Like
From a
you're giving
pure
your
like
comp,
we want to win the race perspective, it makes sense. It's kind
yeah,
of scummy in my view because like Limit hit everything else first, including Denathrius. They hit Denathrius first. They
hmm
streamed the whole thing, Council of Blood notwithstanding, and they had their stream on the whole time. And so while I don't think Echo is like watching Limit stream and ripping strats from them because if, when, on some of these bosses, like trying to figure out the strat as they're doing it and why they're doing it, and then taking it and trying to implement it with your own raid team, like it's just not going to work. Like
right, yeah,
the limit players and the echo players, they go in already knowing what their strat is when they pull a boss for the very first time. They all know what their strat is going to be
hmm
for everything except the end boss, and even though they have some idea of how it's going to.
right, yeah,
So that's not really a huge thing, but I do think it is. I don't know. At the same time, Limit sort of did it because that's how they accidentally killed Council of Blood with their streams off. They wanted to test that
right,
mechanic and then accidentally killed the boss, but they didn't want to give away that that was their strategy for dealing with it because they thought Council of Blood might be a sort of like soft wall
yeah,
builds. Um, so I think doing that is like I can understand if it's like oh we're doing 30 minutes of like testing this mechanic and then we're gonna hop off for the night.
yeah,
But if it's like yeah we're progressing for the next 8 hours with our stream.
yeah. It's a tough one. I mean, I think I'm on the side of Echo here in terms of like I think they made the right choice. Like the ultimate end goal here is to win the race, not to stream to a bunch of people that
Yeah,
want to watch you win it. So, I I mean, in terms of like, I think you even said this. Like in terms of pure competition, it's the right way to do it. It just it the community perception always I think is negative where it shouldn't be because like the
yeah,
community perception of them doing this was like oh they're have some like secret exploit strat or they're like they don't really care all they want to do is win they're behind they're scared like that sort of stuff and it's just you you give your competition like a free view of probably the first like phase and a half to almost the full phase two of a fight where they can just watch it and have extra gear and then go and crush it like
yeah,
they'll see timings they'll see damage numbers like HP numbers things like that so it's from a competitive standpoint, I'm okay with it. Like
yeah. From
I'm
a competitive standpoint, the correct thing is just not stream, basically, regardless. Like, if
yeah,
they were all strictly like trying to play to win, they would not stream it. Period.
agreed. I
But
agree with
that's
that.
obviously there's other benefits that come from streaming, whether it's sponsorship stuff or being able to get people involved in viewer raids to funnel loot on heroic week,
Hmm.
anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, the I guess exposure would be like the sort of word you use there, right?
Yeah,
Like the exposure is great for World First Racing. So, yeah, I mean, it was one night. It sucks that you didn't get to see them like the start of their fight, but I mean, coming out of that, they were still behind. I think.
yeah.
So like
When
it did.
when Limit killed it, they were just barely sub 10%. They were at like 8% on
Yeah.
Denathrius, which like you're like, oh, 8%, it's almost dead, but 8% is still like a tenth of the boss remaining, and you can
Right.
hit 8% with nobody alive and still have a lot of the boss left to do.
Oh yeah, and like that, like watching their phase three, like watching phase three, the worst overlaps are those sub like 15, 10% overlaps. So like that's where the fight really gets difficult is
Yeah,
like when you have that end thing. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think they would have caught them, but yeah, it was an interesting sort of like mini drama thing that like I think people just made a bigger deal out of it than it was. Like they just didn't want to give limit info on a boss that they'll about to start with another reset of gear.
yeah,
So
yeah. Like I said, I don't like it, but at the same time, I understand why they did it, and I think from a tactical perspective, it is totally correct.
yep, yeah, for sure, for sure. Oh man. All right. Anything else on the race tonight?
You have
Trying
on
to think.
here world third predictions.
Oh yeah, no. Before we get to that, I just wanted to see if there's anything else on sort of just the global release stuff, how the final boss went before we get into World Third. Because I have a sleeper. I have a
Okay,
sleeper
you
for
you
World
have a
Third.
sleeper. I don't have anything else on the race itself other than that. I didn't watch as much of it as I expected to, given that I was off this week.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, I guess I was off this week, not last week, and most of the race was. I didn't really watch much Denathria's progression because I was just doing it today. I
Yeah.
needed to pay attention to. I wish I had seen more of their Denathria's progression, but I'm gonna, it's gonna be a bit before we hit Denathria, so I'll have time to prepare.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I also, I mean, I watched more of like the BDGG stuff than a lot of the limit stuff. I watched Max once they started to get like sub like 15% pulls on Denathrius, but a lot of times I was just sort of watching BDG go through it. I love those
Yeah,
boys.
and I
So
mean, one of the things that's useful as an officer in the guild is trying to look at their progression. It's not just okay, what strategy do they use? It's what are people wiping to? And Limit's doing
right,
this, when Echo's doing BDGG is doing this. Because that's things that we can go and like we can try and make sure our raiders are aware of those things that are going to kill us and then spend less time progressing those mechanics. If
mm,
um, people running over each other in phase three is a big deal, we will make sure that when we do our pull number one, we already have plans in place to make sure people don't run over each
yeah,
other. That kind of thing.
yeah, yeah, makes perfect sense. Cool. All right, yeah. Think now World Third predictions. So
Or
as of tonight, this is what Saturday night East Coast time in the United States of America. There are no other guilds on Denathrius,
yeah,
so every guild is still trying to kill Stone Legion generals. So
you
if you
have
haven't,
any
I just
idea how close any of them are?
I do. So actually, fun fact: if you pull up the Warcraft logs Race for World First page, it actually shows the pull count and the best percentage of guilds that enable competitive mode on their log. So basically, it's not going to tell you like what their comp is or anything about the details, but like even if their logs are private, it'll show you like what their best pull was and how many pulls they have on the boss. So if you pull that up, and my sleeper pick is going to be very apparent when you look at the first sort of top four. I guess maybe top five. So as you scroll down, you can see like, like
Oh,
Pieces got their third, their best pulls 47%. They've got 330
and then
pulls.
there's Fat Shark, yes,
Fat
at
Shark, yes.
19.4%, 157%. Wow, that's
Bit
actually crazy. Looking at like Pieces at 47% with 330 polls.
Fat Shark, yes, is the best guild in the world. I don't give a. I don't care what anyone else says. They're the best guild in the world. If they day rated, they would crush everyone else. They would be a perennial world first team. It's absolutely ridiculous how good these guys are. In any event, that's my sleeper pick for world third. By the way.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, um,
Like literally half the pulls of Pieces and at 20%.
the the like Limit's new main tag came from Fat Shark, yes.
Yeah.
Like, and when Max was talking about that on his stream, like he had nothing but good things to say about Fat Shark Yes Raiders. And I think he actually might have said basically what you did. They day rated, they would be, if not a literal world first winning team, like very competitive with.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
even right now, they are maybe a contender for world third, which like imagine being method, like Sko's method, day
Yeah.
rating, and then not even getting world third.
Yeah. Or even like
How
Pieces
soul
and
crushing would that be?
yeah, but even if you look at like Pieces day raids,
Yeah,
BDDG day raids, like Imperative has day rated, like those other guilds, like it just I don't know if I would feel bad because I feel like there's like some I mean, being in like putting myself in the shoes of a person who day raids, I'd feel like kind of upset, but at the same time I'd have to take my hat off to like just how good that
yeah,
team is. Like
absolutely.
like in terms of prep, like the amount of preparation that has to go in like before you even pull, like and sort of like knowing a strat, seeing a strat and then executing is like huge. So I mean, that's my sleeper. Maybe not even a sleeper pick, but that's my pick for world third. Actually, is I think Fat Shark yes gets it. And I think ultimately they're probably helped by the holidays because I don't know how much day rating like the
Yeah,
other guilds are
that's
doing.
true.
So like I think
A
the
lot of
holidays
them
actually help
probably
them.
took at least, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah,
I mean, even if they were still day rating at that point, because at that point it would have been almost 2 full weeks of day rating,
yeah,
which is a lot for someone that's no longer in contention, even for world second.
yeah. Yeah. So I mean, like that's the crazy thing. But yeah, I think Fat Shark, yes, sleeper pick for world third. Um, I just think they're too good, too good. Like the longer this goes, and the less time guilds can sort of put into the raid on like a daily basis. I just think it works out in their
The
favor.
better
So
the odds are of a Fat
yeah,
Shark Yes one. Yeah, I can see that.
yeah. But yeah, that when I pulled that up today, um, for like early this morning, and I was like, they got to 12% on 150 polls. This is absolutely ridiculous when you look at like Pieces and the guilds around them at 100 polls more than them, and at a higher percentage too. So, um, yeah, it's crazy. So,
Yeah,
that's my sleeper pick. Those dudes, that's crazy. Um, but yeah, I mean that's world third predictions. I mean, hopefully we'll see a world third. I mean, like we said, like these guys are all still progressing on generals. So they still have to even start on Denathrius, and
yeah.
Denathrius for at least limit was 150, 143 pull boss. So you expect that number to come down a little bit now that guilds have seen the strat and like the bugs are mostly gone.
I
So
don't even know if I
um,
would expect that to go down. Really, how many pulls was limits Stone Legion?
I
Like,
don't
how
know.
many pulls was limits Stone Legion?
Does it actually
Um,
say on that page?
it should. Complexity limit defeats Stone Legion generals after 292 pulls.
92 pulls. Yeah, I
So
saw
like
it's
a
on there.
bunch of
Yeah.
these guilds are actually already at or close to limits pulls on Stone Legion generals. Um, Post reset.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Maybe it won't be less. Yeah.
like there is, you know, there's an element of strategy here where like Limit's developing the strat, but there's also the element of Limit just has actual fucking insane players.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
while Fat Shark Yes does, Echo does, Pieces does, to it's clear that it's not to the same extent that like
Oh yeah.
Limit's
Yeah.
roster has just shown over and over again this tier and last tier that they are nuts.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, even and we talked about even like Echo, right? In terms of like general pull count, like those guys build a strategy and then just go and execute it, right? Like there's not a lot of mistakes in terms of like once they settle on something they want to do, they might take a while to talk about it, right? They might break for 15, 20 minutes every pull and then talk about something, but every pull they get better. And I think they're very good at sort of that execution, right?
Yeah.
Um, which I think is, yeah, that's the one thing I pulled out of Max's stream today too, was like, look, like it's funny when you hear Max or really any world first, and I'll kind of a side tangent here to this world third prediction, but it's sort of like them talking about like what they consider good classes versus bad classes. And like his point is like this literally matters to me in my guild. He's like, in your guild, you should literally bring your best players on the best classes.
Yeah.
Because like balance at the level you're going to get to this doesn't matter. Because he's like, here I might need a Devo to survive this mechanic where you just need a trank or a revival,
Yeah.
right? Like you don't need the reduction, you just need the throughput. So,
Yeah,
um,
and the same
but
thing
yeah,
goes for like he was talking about tanks as well, and like
yeah,
they obviously didn't play a brewmaster. That kind of was a surprise, but looking at how tank balance actually panned out, I don't think it's all that surprising. You know, like all the tanks in raid are relatively close. Um, brewmaster, I think, is actually one of the worst ones right now at low gear.
hmm
Which is never how Brewmaster's been since Legion because of how Stagger worked. But now that Stagger scales so heavily off of agility, and we have like I'm 207. I still haven't DR'd Stagger's agility conversion yet. I'm still getting like 2, 3 more. By the time I get to 215, I will have 4 or 5% more Stagger. Um, so like the gear scaling is there, but it's not as good without the gear, and that's what Limit cares about. Whereas like Vengeance is actually just nuts right now in a lot of ways. Front
yeah,
Warrior still has shield block, and there's not a lot of fights this tier that require you to be tanking 24/7. Sludge Fist does. Sludge Fist is spooky. Sludge Fist is spooky on everything, and Front Warrior
right,
is still good enough for that. And they bring Rally, which has been buffed. So
right. And you're not running DPS warriors, so they bring shout too. Generally speaking, you're not
yeah,
running DPS warriors. So, yeah, I mean that's the yeah that's the one sort of key point coming out of that, which was yeah insane players and they're playing sort of their best classes. So, but yeah, those dude, Fat Shark, yes, man, those guys. I just think, why are they so
I'm
good?
there with you. Let's go Fat Shark. Yes.
Dude, that's my new. I think I'm just gonna root for them every tier. Like they're just gonna be like, I don't care
just
about Limit or Echo.
just hope for the upset where the guild that doesn't day raid
Oh
gets
yeah,
world first. Uh, how imagine that. What would have to go wrong for that to actually
I,
happen?
I don't think like I don't think there's a world where that happens
No,
just because Limit's
unless there's
NA.
something that's like totally broken that
Yeah, I mean,
accidentally happens on
I
for them.
I could see it happening if like EU was the only place where guilds played, right? Because then you could get like a reset of gear and they get a kill on a final boss like within the reset time.
Yeah,
But like that doesn't happen with Limit being an NA because they get at least 24 hours on a boss after reset to like kill it before pieces or sorry before Fat Shark Yes gets there. But I mean I could see a world where like they get to a final boss, you know, it's unkillable at the current gear levels. They get through a reset, get a quick clear, and then they kill it that night, right?
I mean the only thing I can see like pieces killed and pieces they
Unat.
not where that was just like a 600 loss, um, and it came out of nowhere because nobody was streaming at the time really, and
Well,
uh
they picked the sixth strat. Like they picked
yeah,
Shaman, right? Like that
yeah,
was their
that was their thing. That
yeah,
was why they killed the boss before anybody else. Their shaman strike.
yeah.
And I could see something like that happening where like if Fat Shark Yes gets to a boss and everybody's on the boss,
hmm
and either the boss just breaks in some way, lets them get the kill, which honestly kind of sucks when something like that
Right.
happens. But it could also be, they come up with it just a mind blowing strat that nobody else has come up with. It seems unlikely, as many other like
Yeah,
really top tier people are in Echo and Limit, but you never know.
yeah,
That's about the only situation I could see where like basically the day rating prior to that just doesn't matter, and it all
right.
comes down to who can kill the last boss most efficient.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's for sure makes sense. But yeah, it would take a lot, I think, for them to be there. But I mean, it's fun to watch those guys progress because I think they do it in such a
I am going to have to go and watch them
yeah,
prog because that's actually something like my guild raids 2 nights a week. Obviously we look to use our raid hours efficiently. And like that check, yes, it's not. I need to go and watch their
yeah,
street. See what I can. Like, I've been watching Limits, but Limits day rating.
yeah,
I think I have a little bit more time. So there's things I can learn. Obviously, like they're way above where we are. There's tons I can still learn from that. But I am very curious to look at Fat Shark, how they're
yeah.
how they're doing and fitting so much into so.
Yeah, I mean that would be the interesting thing if they ever do sort of like a retrospective on like their raid tier, like what they do. Um, would be to just to hear about like their preparation because that'd be the coolest part of like what they do is like how do they get ready for a boss fight? Like how do they get a boss to 12% and 150 pulls when other guilds are double that and also triple their health percentage essentially, right? Like
Yeah,
they're so yeah, it's yeah, Fat Shark, yes. Sleeper World third. You heard it here first. I think they're gonna get it. Um, so cool. Any other topics for tonight? I think that's all I had.
no, there's
Um,
a couple of things that you have on here. Before we hit the uh, the outro, apparently Babylonius himself is going to be interviewing Trill.
yeah. So Babs tweeted out today that tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which it actually is not going to matter because you're not going to. Well, if you're listening to this live, it'll matter. If you're listening to this in retrospect, go check out the VOD,
The
but
VOD
of
will be
Babs'
linked.
channel. Yeah,
It may not be
but
immediately linked because it may not be up immediately. But I will link it once it's available.
yep. So Babs is interviewing Trill tomorrow. That is Sunday, December 27th, on his channel at 5 p.m. Eastern. So if you're listening to this live, awesome, go check it out. If you're listening to this in retrospective, grab the VOD. But yeah, he's gonna talk to Trill. Tweet him questions. Just ask about how he did all the damage he does. But yeah, it should be really. It'll be interesting for Windwalker players, and it'd be interesting to see Trill's point of view. I consider Trill the best World of Warcraft player in the game. So it's always nice to hear from the Messi or the Ronaldo, pick your poison, of the World of Warcraft world. Sort of talk about the game. So
I know exactly about enough about both of those references about the fact that those are both controversial comparisons.
that's why I got to mention both of them. In the terms of the football or soccer world, right? But yeah, I mean, Trill like limit, Windwalker, but he's also like a multiple BlizzCon winner, like rank one on tons of classes in terms of like PvP arena stuff. And he's on limit, so he's got two world firsts under his belt and a bunch of other, US firsts even previously. So,
Yeah.
um, dude's a straight gamer. So it'll be
Speaking of,
interesting. Oh, it'll be interesting to see or hear from him on how the race went, and like why Windwalker is sort of why it was being slept on. I think that would be the most interesting question I have.
yeah, yep.
So.
Um, Speaking of PvP though, do want to add one more thing before we hit the outro. You should be doing PvP right. Arenas kind of suck. Okay, I was playing Prop Paladin Boomkin 2s with a guildie yesterday.
Okay.
One of the arenas that's you're gonna hate me. But what we would do is he would start in stealth. We'd get ready to convoke. I would bop him before he broke stealth, so he couldn't get no physical interrupts or stuns or damage. Convoking, and he could just get a full someone before he realized what was going on. And if they
I
didn't,
hate it.
wog.
So dumb, dude.
It's
So
super dumb. Like PvP is in an awful state in so many ways, but
dumb.
um, you really don't need much right now in order to get meaningful gear from PvP. 1400 is basically free, and it gets you a 207 piece at least. Like right now, I'm gonna get a 207 piece a weapon on my paladin, which is a huge upgrade. That's 30 something eye levels. My monk is wearing 2 PvP pieces that just go in slots that he just didn't get loot from the raid on,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the real value of PvP right now. It's not a good primary gearing system in the same way that just doing raids or just doing Mythic Plus is not a good primary gearing system, but there's so much value from doing that to get those last couple of item slots filled out that I really think that if you are raiding right, that is something you should be pursuing. And arenas like don't take that much, like a lot of arenas. You can get through a lot of them real fast.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, and the cool thing about that too is like you said, you can target a specific piece. So it's literally used to fill in
Yeah.
like gear slots. And it's very, very what's consistent, I'll say,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is
Super consistent.
beautiful.
Like I
Yeah.
know people in our guild that have like, tiered a scythe for shoulders and like just haven't gotten them. Is you do it tiered a scythe and time it, sometimes you don't, sometimes you're the sole male user and well, the wrong shoulders dropped.
Right.
The
Yeah.
other armor type. Can't use them. Out for someone else
Exactly.
and you can't trade them. There's all these things that can go wrong. Whereas like in that same time you could have round out people, gotten your conquest cap and bought shoulder. And they would not be
Exactly.
as good. Like 1600 is I think 213, so that's heroic eye level. You don't start getting up to mythic eye level until like 2100, which honestly I'm not hitting 2100.
Neither am I.
I know my limits. I'm not even gonna try. I'll hit
Yeah.
1600 and I'll be happy with being able to buy like 213 pieces than the slot I need.
Right. Yeah.
But I would highly recommend that if you're raiding right now, you
Yeah. I did a little bit of it. Honestly, just because I have a couple of like legendary slots I like swap out of. So
yeah
like the off pieces in those slots are a little bit low.
yeah.
Um,
I'm the same deal. I still have an off piece that I need to replace.
mhm.
But I getting the pieces I always used upgraded was a higher
Yeah,
priority.
exactly. That's for sure.
Uh,
Um,
yeah.
cool.
Anything else? So no Q&A today. It's Christmas week. We
Yes.
didn't get questions from people.
We
So
gave you we gave you look, let's from us to you, we gave you the week off from me trying to pronounce your terrible, terrible names. So
your
that's my present
everyone's
to
Christmas
to you.
present to a nom is that the nom gets a week off of patrol.
It's I feel like it's the other way around. Like I don't people don't have to suffer through me
I,
trying to
I think this is like a
pronounce.
buy like both sides benefit from this arrangement.
That's fair. That's fair. I'd agree to that. I'd agree to that. For certain. For certain.
But I think that is going to just about wrap it up for today. If you enjoyed today's podcast and you want to support it and all the other work that we do over on the Peak of Serenity, whether it's guide writing, which again I'm going to plug Kiov's Raid and Dungeon Guides for Brewmasters. They are fantastic. We have our Brewmaster guides, we have our Mistweaver and Windwalker guides, all kinds of work that goes into maintaining and writing those. You can do that over on our Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And of course, not everybody can financially contribute. If you do, want to still support the site and the community, you know, come hang out in Discord. We've got channels just for that, and it's a good time. Anyway, as always, thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.